Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for Cancer rising, also known as the Ascendant. And the rising sign is that image that you project onto other people when you are out and about, first meeting them, they don't know you very well, and that's the first thing they see. Now, speaking of the first thing that you see, your physical appearance is going to be the first thing that they see. So the rising sign also covers that. Although I would add that I believe that the sun sign can influence the way that you present yourself as well, even the way you dress and things. But I think the rising sign is very influential in that regard. It's the cusp of the first house of the self, the body, okay? But it's not the essence of you. And I also believe that it is tied into your coping mechanism, how you, or mechanisms, how you were able to fit into your family of origin. And by the way, somebody could say, well, I was adopted. Well, anyone who raised you, where you spent at least the first few years of life, and that kind of environment. I feel like the rising sign can reflect that, just like the moon sign can reflect the type of mothering that you had. And so you look at all of these factors to get like an insight, as well as the fourth house, which Cancer happens to rule, by the way. And, you know, when I'm interpreting a natal chart, I'm looking at all these factors and seeing, okay, well, you know, how did this person, you know, what was their childhood like, possibly? And the values that were instilled or the values that weren't instilled. And the sun sign, I would say, are your values, your ethics in life. And so if there's a big clash between your sun and your rising sign, then you may have felt like a black sheep in your family. And the rising sign is the way that you try to get accepted and fit in with that family, but it isn't necessarily who you are. It's more of this brainwashing. Well, maybe that's a bit extreme, but this conditioning. And the other thing about that is that if your sun sign is compatible with Cancer, so if you have a water sun sign, so if you're talking about Pisces, Scorpio, or another Cancer, if you're Earth, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, there's going to be a lot of alignment with your rising sign. So you may have really felt like you were born into a family where you really fit into what they were about. And so there is no conflict there. I mean, obviously we all have conflicts, I guess, to some degree, but basically you may have really resonated with the way that they saw the world, what they were about. And so it's not so much for you rebelling against that, but for you to sustain it in a way. And so based on Cancer, if we look at the physical appearance as the rising sign, it's kind of funny because Cancer people may resemble a crab, where their, I don't know if you'd say their bodies are, they could be kind of roundish. You know, women can have big breasts. The chest is very featured. I think it rules the chest or the breasts. So for Cancerian men, I was even thinking about this as I was attempting to record it several times before this, but because I had read in one of my sources that they said that Cancer women may have large breasts, and I think I read somewhere else, though, that some Cancer women have that are very flat-chested, where they have no breasts. So it might be that the chest is extreme, either very voluptuous or very, non-existent. I don't know if it's just an extreme situation with the chest or if it's just very voluptuous. Now, for men, I was thinking, how would that work out for men, though? I was just thinking of moobs, not talking about moobs, but maybe because I believe that Sylvester Stallone but he's a Cancer sun sign and he's all built up. So maybe, again, that might be an example of that influence affecting the sun sign as well. But if you are a Cancer male who has great pecs, give me a shout out below. And also the other very unusual thing about the Cancer rising sign is they may have this very distinctive walk. Now you think of how a crab, which is your symbol, or is the sign, or I should say the sign of the Cancer, walks. They kind of like shuffle. They have that weird back and forth kind of a walk. A Cancer person may have this, and they may, and I'm just saying this on my own, they may even have legs that are kind of bow-legged in that same vein. That's how I envision it. So that's just a little funny aside there. And let me think. But there may be in the eyes a very dreamy look. So even if the person is, let's say, an Aquarian, and, like an Aquarius, something like that, the person may have a very soulful kind of an expression in their eyes that shows how nurturing they are. Or a Cancer or a Gemini sun sign, which we associate the air signs with more cerebral tendencies. And these people may even, and I keep saying these people instead of saying you, and let's say you do have a sun in Gemini, it might be charming that you have all these Gemini characteristics in your personality, but you're always concerned about other people's well-being. Do they feel okay? Are they warm enough? Have they, eaten yet? And so that may make you, if you were like a Gemini or a Sagittarius, more likely to be a homebody or to be tied to your roots. And actually, Cancer is associated with history, and this could be your family's genealogy. You might be the family historian. You might be the one who always looks at those websites and traces people. And you may be tied, whether it's like physically or emotionally or both, to your homeland, your hometown, and other members of your family may have like moved on and they don't have that same sentimentality. And that just goes to show how important it is, because I would say like the rising sign is our roots in a lot of ways. So it's how we, grew up, and therefore you're going to obviously be influenced by that to some degree or another. Now, one characteristic of Cancer rising, which is kind of interesting. This can also occur with Moon in Cancer, Sun in Cancer individuals, but it's hypersensitivity. It has to be really looked at and really kind of eradicated as much as possible. With the rising sign, it can come, I feel, from one or two causes, either being teased as a child and maybe your family teased you, or you were teased at school and that created self-consciousness, or you came from a family that was overly protective. So it's like, the participation trophies, being afraid of treating the child like they're so fragile that any little thing is going to, create problems. Both of those they're polar opposites, but the end result is they're extremes in treatment. And so being ridiculed highlights things about a person. It's kind of a weird thing to be ridiculed a lot, to be picked on, bullied, because you're like the center of attention, but for negative reasons. That's the weird thing about it. When you are coddled or overly, coddled isn't the word I'm looking for, but like where you have a parent who's very fear-based, or family that believes that life is inherently dangerous and we have to protect everyone or protect people's precious feelings, that can create an environment for being too sensitive as an adult. Sensitivity is beautiful because it means that you're going to treat other people with kindness, loving kindness, as they say in Buddhism. But with Cancer rising, you can actually be hypersensitive and get very crabby. There's that crab again, where you're snappish, those claws coming out of the crab, and that hard shell, crawling under that hard shell to protect yourself, when really there's nothing to protect. If you're an adult and you're in a toxic relationship, you can leave the relationship. It's not the same as when you're a child. You actually have options. A lot of times, though, Cancer rising may perceive that they're being threatened when they're not. When somebody is truly gently teasing them and it's not meant in any way to be degrading. And I think that it might be hard for a lot of Cancer rising individuals to tell the difference, to be able to know that. So they may overreact on a regular basis, and people around them may say that person's very moody, touchy, and we have to walk on eggshells around them because they take offense at every little thing. Dr. Wayne Dyer, who has since passed, said something once that I felt is very, very on point. He said, if you're looking for reasons to be offended, you will usually find them. Because if you look hard enough, you can find many different outrages against yourself. And some people seem to go out of their way to look for them, and that's something to avoid. But this same quality can make you extremely caring for other people. And it may even influence the type of work that you eventually do, like, for instance, becoming a nurse, talking about nurse versus doctor because of the nurturing aspect. I still have to find out what that phoneme NU or NUR represents, because it has to do with taking care of somebody. And so being able to understand that and appreciate that quality within yourself, that you know that you are sympathetic, and not allow yourself to be manipulated, because people may sense that about you and take advantage of it, and knowing the difference, knowing that you can care about somebody, but also not getting sucked into their drama if they are trying to get you to feel sorry for them so that they can get something out of you that they should be getting from themselves. Okay. So what else can I say? One thing that I want to stress that I didn't say in my prior videos about the Ascendant is that whatever planet, or I guess in the moon's case, you'd say the entity, whatever entity rules the rising sign, that's your ruler. And so that, whatever that heavenly bodily influence is, it will affect you, or it's significant. Let's say it's more significant in your chart, in your natal chart. What house it appears will be very important. But also, you may have some affinity for this on some level. For you, it's the moon. So you're ruled by the moon, being Cancer rising. Doesn't matter if your sun is Gemini, if your sun is Leo, you're ruled by the moon. And therefore, sometimes people say, well, should I watch my moon video? Maybe that is the perfect person to watch the moon videos. Somebody who is ruled by the moon. When I say moon, I'm sorry. I mean, watch a sun sign video, but, for your moon sign. But in general, this can make you quite changeable. And people tend to think of Geminis as being very changeable. And that's true. But Cancer rising can give them a run for their money. And you have to watch out for this Cancer rising, because your moods may dictate to you your opinions on a particular topic. And then when you change again, everyone has to come along with for the ride. And so just kind of like more constancy and less wavering, because that can also lead to kind of going back and forth between maybe even indecision to some degree. You're capable of taking action, being a cardinal sign, but sometimes you may really waver before you take that action. And it can be crazy making for other people if they're trying to gauge where you're coming from, and all of a sudden now it's a new day and you have a new opinion based upon a new emotional state. That's the other thing about being moody, learning how to have more stability in your moods, because I think a lot of Cancer rising people wear their hearts on their sleeves, and I'm not really in favor of that. I think that you have to be able to function in life when you're in a crappy mood, or if you feel like sad or something like that, you have to still suck it up and be able to present yourself in a way where you don't allow your personal problems to affect your attitude and how other people see you, because you can drag people down on those days when you're feeling, down in the dumps. And really, you, because you have this as your rising sign, this may be something that's very prominent, where your moods, it's like a barometer. Okay, how is Sally? She came into the office today. Does she have a frown on her face or a smile? Which Sally are we going to get? And I'm not saying stuff your feelings away, but know when it's appropriate to share them. And in a general setting, it's not, you know what I mean? That's kind of where that rising sign comes in, where you're just projecting a certain image. And yet there has to be some knowledge of how that image affects other people, how that outer reflection affects them. And so the piece that goes along with this is self-pity, because Cancers of all stripes can feel sorry for themselves, and I was going to say they could give Pisces a run for their money in that regard, and be manipulative, using their moods and using emotion in general to kind of control the atmosphere and get people to do what they want them to do. So feeling like nobody loves them, nobody is listening to their ideas, just things like that. And it becomes a why don't you yes but game, where people try to say, oh, well, this happened, and they're like, no. And it's really because they want to have that ability to get that. They're trying to garner sympathy. And so they're not interested in solutions, because then they won't have a problem anymore. So this is how you have to be careful about regulating these things within yourself that may be kind of on the unconscious level, where you just go into that mode because you're used to it, because you've been conditioned into it for some reason. All signs have a shadow aspect. I'm not picking on Cancer rising, but I am saying that Cancer rising people have wonderful qualities. It's just that some of the shadow aspects, they can flare up when the Cancer rising person feels unappreciated in life. And the more that you can learn how to soothe yourself, in other words, learn techniques that you can do when you're feeling unloved or unappreciated, rather than pursuing a particular relationship with fervor and almost like with this sense of entitlement, a demanding attitude about it. The Cancers can cling to others. They can have that smothering effect. Even Cancer rising, I would imagine, can mimic some of these traits. is learning how to do that for yourself. And again, this can be so reptilian where it's coming from the past. It's like you're on automatic with it and you're not even thinking that you're doing it, but you are. And learning how to make yourself feel good, how to be okay within yourself, how not to worry too much about anything, because you can be worrywarts too. And this can be, like I said, conditioning from the family of origin. The world is a scary place. We have to have all this, we have to have all this money saved because we're planning for a potential calamity. And I like what the late Dick Gregory said. He was an activist. He was also a fruitarian. And he said, and a comedian too. And he said, he was, I don't know if when he died he was a fruitarian, but he said, I have one of his books. It was like a raw food book from the early 70s that I got in a thrift store. And he said, he was talking about insurance, how absurd it is that people buy insurance and, preparing for that rainy day. He says, he goes, you're actually investing all this money in something and hoping you don't actually have to collect. And it's like a counter productive kind of a thing. You're giving your currency, your energy. That's what, money is, energy, currents of energy. You're investing in this thing of a potential calamity, but you don't want that calamity, so you don't want to actually have to ever collect on it, whether it's healthcare or whatever. And so it's like at cross purposes. But he also said, if you're saving for a rainy day, you'll get that rainy day. And I that always stuck with me. Probably because I was raised by a person who by a sun in Cancer parent. So that, can you can get really aware of how that mentality works. And it's very important to be prudent, to be, to have, nobody's saying not to have savings, but to also understand that there's nothing out there's nothing material that truly protects you from these things, and that you have to have faith and you have to understand that life is temporary. And, being too immersed in security can create a lot of worry and just in general a sense of unease, about yourself. And even if you think of the law of attraction, you don't want to create those very scenarios that you're afraid that are going to happen. So it's really about cultivating a much more positive and just being full of faith that things will work out the way that you want and not worrying so much. So anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this. And if you would like this kind of reading, I have a natal chart interpretation that is this and with other entities, not just your rising sign. And also looking at the next year, next 12 months, and what is in store for you, some dates that might be particularly important for you in different areas of your life. Check my link below to my site. My website is rainamoonastrology.com. Take care. Bye.